Welcome to The Mystic and the Dreamer, our spiritual podcast about dreams, reincarnation, shamanism, divination, and that whole mystical realm that's hard to talk about.
Yeah, my name is Priscila Di Macedo, and you just heard Peter H. Falkdale. We've been wanting to do this type of podcast for quite a while. And we adore talking. We're two Geminis, by the way, so that goes to show you how much we love to talk. And probably we can talk to a blank wall, but lucky for us, we have you guys. So this is a spiritual topic we're being discussing about spirituality and what this has done to our lives. This is more of a way to awaken the viewers and the readers so they can see how their experiences kind of match with ours. Because I think it's a universal thing. I think we all are seekers in some way about why we're actually here in this earthly plane. And interesting enough, me and Peter have different backgrounds. I come from Brazil. He comes from Denmark. And with these two aspects and how we grew up and how we see spirituality, I think it's going to be pretty unique to share our experience with you all. And so I'm very excited to do so. So with further ado, I just want Peter to go ahead and just tell him his side of the story here, because his is actually pretty fascinating with why he stumbled upon this thing called spirituality.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's fascinating, but my upbringing is and was very Danish because I didn't really believe in anything. My first 29 years, I was totally an atheist. I called myself an atheist. I despised religion. And I pretty much only had three interests in life. It was women, women, and women. And then my writing. I'm a novelist. And by the way, I forgot drinking. I'm a novelist by trade. I have written 14 novels in Danish. A few of them are out in 4 other countries, one in the US. But beneath all that writing ambition and that work I have been doing since I was 16, there's always been an interest, a slowly arrived interest in spirituality. And as I said before, it wasn't anything I was conscious of before I became incredibly depressed when I was 29. And I actually remember the incident when that happened. I was lying in bed with a girl I just met. And you always hear that people feel empty after they had sex. I felt empty while I had sex. And I thought,
a problem.
That is a problem. And I thought, what is wrong with me? And from that point on, I was 29 and a half. And for those of you who are into astrology, you will know that this poor man had his Saturn round like everybody does when they're around 29. Because when you're 29 and 30, life will ask you one question. And that is, are you on the right path? And that is what astrologically is called a Saturn round. So that question was very easy for me to answer. I was not on the right track. I worked on national Danish radio writing satire. I wrote satire and sketches for TV as well. And I wanted to do something that was more serious. I wanted it to have a sense of humor, and I wanted to use my so-called sense of humor as well, but I was incredibly frustrated. So a few days before I turned 30, I had a very strong and incredibly powerful and simple dream. I dreamed of a candlelight with a flame. That's it. It was in the dark. It was surrounded by the dark. And I woke up with that feeling that something strange had happened. I didn't know what it was. But the next day, or a few days later, and this was all around my 30th birthday, a friend of mine told me out of the blue that she had been to an astrologer, and that had been fantastic. And the old satirical part of me, which by the way still is alive to this day, said, astrologer, who the hell would want to go to an astrologer? They're all frauds. I mean, that's ridiculous. But she told me it had been very powerful. It had told her a lot about herself. And a voice in me said, you have to do that, Peter. So I went to that astrologer 2 weeks later, and I was blown away with how much he could see in my horoscope. He was actually very hard on me in a lot of ways, but then again, who wouldn't be hard on someone who is a Gemini with a lot of Scorpio? And some very, very difficult aspects in the horoscope, a lot of 8th house. We won't get into the astro slang. That is, however, some of the things I'm going to cover in our podcasts. So I went home very impressed by what I have experienced, and I simply decided I wanted to become an astrologer. Out of the blue, I just knew that that is something I wanted to do apart from my writing career. So I went to a bookstore in Copenhagen, and the first book I opened, the first astrology book I opened, was written by someone who had an astrology school, and that astrology school was 1 mile away from where I lived in downtown Copenhagen. And guess what? The next course started a week later. So a week later, this atheist, satirical writer, deeply frustrated man sat in an astrology class and couldn't quite believe what the hell he was doing with all those other fanatics. And I loved it. And 2 years later, I started out as a professional astrologer. And contrary to my writing career that had been quite good, but also a struggle, astrology came incredibly easy to me. I found that after 3 years, I was invited to several big astrology conferences in Europe, especially in Norway and in Copenhagen. And I somehow had a gift for that actually was an intuitive gift. Actually, I hate using the word gift because everything is a gift. If you're a carpenter, that's a gift. I don't know why we always use that about intuition and the arts. Everything is a gift. But I became a professional astrologer, and with that came a huge interest in reincarnation, which is something that is still very, very important to me, and also an interest in dreams, since it was a very simple dream that had started my personal growth and my so-called spiritual pathway. I could talk and talk forever, as Scylla said. We are both Geminis, which of course any book will tell you that two Geminis should never be a couple. But this is actually going pretty well.
Yeah, it is actually. It's been fun meeting Peter and talking to him and about these certain subject matters. It's really interesting. I, on the other hand, my whole story of how I came about the spiritual realm, it's really kind of hard to explain because, I was born in Brazil. I grew up there until, about 7. So in my family, I can even remember as far back, maybe when I was 3 or 4, I've always had these really strong empathic dreams, but I also could sense a lot. I could see a lot. And my family are, healers, and I think 2 others are trance mediums, actually. So just growing up in a household where it was commonplace to talk about spirits and the afterlife and death and healing and, Brazil as well, it is a melting pot, of course, with many people and many cultures. But the interesting thing about all of that in the spiritual side or religious side of things, if you want to look at it, is that we have a lot of blended religions together, a lot from the African slave influence that, brought in the shamanism part of it and their gods and their goddesses and their dances. And then with all the Catholic stuff that also was around because of the Portuguese, it just became like a whole melted, amazing mess of like what was religion and what was considered spiritual, and a lot of that blended in for me. I mean, my grandma was an amazing woman, amazing healer that, I mean, she had such a clairvoyant gift that it even scared me, because she would just be the one that would tell you things in your future. And quite honestly, she would be so accurate that half the time when I would see her, you know, especially as a teenager and you kind of trying to hide everything from your parents or whatever, it was like, oh God, what did grandma know, you know? And she would be so accurate. And there came a time where I'm like, grandma, I don't want to know all this stuff, you know? Like, I'd rather not know what's in my future. And obviously that's not really true, but I did have a little bit of fear, healthy fear in doing all that. But I also knew I had that gift. I have that clairvoyant gift, and I also have that intuitive gift. And I've been, you know, doing card readings since I was 15 years old. And that divination has helped me so much, including in my family and myself, you know, get a better aspects of what's going on in my life. And so all of that tied in together, I can just tell you, I thought all this was normal. And it still is a normal part of my life. But then, you know, the ones that were trance mediums my uncles, actually, my aunt, that are trance mediums, you know, that part of it was very scary to me, because they were working as healers. They actually worked a long time ago in the 80s with John of God to help certain healings. And seeing that, having entities being... you know, being control of your body and speaking and doing all that through you, I found it fascinating, but I also knew that's not what I wanted to do, because I'm a person that wanted to be in control of what what I'm saying, what I'm seeing. So it was very fascinating as a kid. Like, I saw a lot, and I experienced a lot of also contemplé, macumba. So I saw what some considered like black magic and all of this. I don't honestly practice any black magic, but it was interesting growing up in Brazil to see how people use certain, I don't know, rituals. And it was really fascinating. And I just loved everything about that realm of the unknown and everything that it entails. So my upbringing was that. I was immersed in it. I've had many prophetic dreams of my own. I've had many spiritual experiences as well. So it was not something out of the ordinary for me. Now, you pluck me in after I moved here to the States, that was a whole different culture shock, because I literally came from Brazil and now landed in Idaho, which, you know, no offense to Idaho, but there's really not much going on there in that realm at that time.
Idaho.
No, there's nothing wrong with Idaho. It's just I could tell it was a culture shock, right? Because I didn't have... It was like we couldn't talk about these things because people would think we're nuts, right? People would probably think we're crazy lunatics. And we had to hide a lot with all that, how we spoke and how we did that. So then when I moved to Portland, Oregon, I didn't hide anymore, but I also felt like it was more open and people were more open to the spiritual side of things. And having these conversations, and also they're having their own experiences and sharing their own experiences. And so then I became like, this is easier to talk about. This is more interesting now that I have a community, or I have friends that have, you know, certain gifts, if you might want to call that. Even though I think everybody has a sixth sense and intuition, I think we all do. So, you know, this is why it feels good to talk about the unseen and the unknown and the spiritual side of things, because I definitely believe this is Earth School and we came here with a mission. You know, we came here to fulfill our life and perfect our soul somehow, some way, with all these life lessons we are going through right now. Yeah. So So then meeting Peter and him with all the astrology and stuff, he's also helped me out with the astrology side of things, and I found that utter fascinating, and reincarnation as well.
Yeah, reincarnation for me is probably what interests me the most today, even though I'm very much aware that the past shouldn't take over, that we live in the now, our experiences are now, but sometimes to understand the now, it's extremely valuable to go back and see your life through a different lens. And you do that by knowing that you've had so many experiences and so many anxieties and so many abilities and problems that kind of make you understand where you are today. I know personally about 6 of my lives, and I'm going to talk about that later during these podcasts. I have also used them in some of my novels. As I said, I have written 14 novels. One is out in English and is called The Tsar's Dwarf, and takes place in the early 1700s, and that is a period I know very well. However, I'm not in the novel, but I do believe that all kinds of artists, when they go back, whether they are actors or whether they are writers, that they often use a subconscious memory when they describe things. And I can only say that I really know the Baroque period without really understanding why. But then again, I do understand why, because I've had at least one life in that period. So reincarnation is something that still is very important to me, both as a writer, but again also to understand my pathway, and also understand how earlier mistakes are standing in my way today. All of this we will cover much later. I want to add a few more things since we are talking about our spiritual pathways. I followed an Indian guru in the 90s and in the beginning of the zeros. And that was a very, very, very good experience for me, in the sense that it taught me that gurus are good for a short while, and then you have to walk your own pathway. I find it very unhealthy when people have the same guru for decades and they go to India perhaps once or twice a year and then sit and listen to the guru and then go back and do the exact same things they did before. I do believe that our guru is within. I do believe that the God is within as well. And that's kind of the way I live my life now. I'm inspired by a lot of fantastic spiritual saints and prophets, whatever you want to call them, through history. I think that's beautiful, but there's something in me that doesn't want to put the truth into any religion. I am totally convinced that no saint, no writer, no spiritual being has the whole truth. And I think that the belief that all truth should exist in Christianity, on Islam, on Buddhism, on Hinduism is the biggest problem in the world. That's where religions suddenly become diabolic, when they think they have the truth and other people don't. So I think you will find during these podcasts that Scylla and I have had a lot of so-called spiritual experiences that make us believe in the divine, but that doesn't mean we have all the answers. We learn every day, and we don't believe the truth is found in this podcast. We hope to inspire you with what we have experienced. That's all. And we hope to make you think a little, perhaps, and even laugh at us if you think we're ridiculous, because we probably are.
Yeah, absolutely. I do not claim to have the truth, and I also think that's a very dangerous assumption to have people out there say that they know the truth and the only truth and the God truth. Nobody is ever in this lifetime gonna know the ultimate truth. It's too big, it's too profound, and I think that is part of the divine plan, is to have it be mysterious. So how else are you going to learn in this earth school? You know what I'm saying? You can't have all the answers to the final, and expect, oh, I'm going to go ahead and take this final quiz right now. Here are all the answers. I mean, come on. You can't cheat through life. It doesn't work that way. There's a reason why life is, the way it's set up. There's a reason why this is duality. There is a reason why there's light and dark, because we have to learn through these contrasts and these hard times, and nobody's got the answers. You know what I'm saying? But the fun thing about human beings, because I'm sure you're one and not an alien, who knows?
Well, I think it's
is that we have shared experiences, and we can learn from others as they go through life and their mistakes or their triumphs, and that's what this to me is all about. Is just sharing a common ground in this realm that nobody has the actual truth. But boy, is it freaking interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it's being open, being curious is so important. And I actually had a conversation today about people who think they are highly evolved. I don't think any of us know who are highly evolved and who is furthest on the spiritual pathway, if you can say that, because I think we all full of light, we all full of darkness, and the more light we take in, the more temptations we meet. And I think a living proof of that is the many gurus out there who've been caught with their pants down. That if you lose your humility, if you seriously believe you have all the answers, suddenly your life's work becomes diabolic. It's not something worth following. And that is probably why all the people that I like and have faith in, like Buddha and Francis of Assisi, they teach humility. We have to be humble, and we have to know that in certain areas we probably are highly evolved, and in others we are not. And that's not something we can judge. So having said that, our first real podcast will be the next one. And that will be about dreams, and especially about what we call visitation dreams or dreams of the departed, meaning our loved ones.
Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting topic to discuss, because I know personally I've had a life-altering experience of these visitation dreams of a particular loved one that comes in. So I can't wait to share that experience with you in the next episode. But I do want to say thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our first Mystic and the Dreamer podcast. And we hope to continue, and I hope you get to join us and support us in this journey as well. So very much looking forward to doing the next podcast here with Peter.
Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah.
See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.